So we got 3 different ways we could go about making an assignment. The first way is to use an existing assessment from the test library. So they do have a big library, lots of stuff. We didn't purchase this product because we thought, hey, here's a data bank of tests for y'all to use. You're welcome to use them. But I just want you to know that's not why we bought it, because I got a lot of people saying, well, I can't find this, I can't find that. I'm like, well, we didn't buy it for you to find some stuff in the database, but there is some stuff there, and you can look through it, and you might find some stuff you can use. So that's one way, use an existing assessment from the test library. You can create a new test, and that test can be made from pre-built questions. So all of the questions in every test in their library are also like tagged separately and available separately to just grab to build your own test. Or you can also create your own questions, and it can be your questions and these questions you found. It can all be mixed together. You just make your own test. Or you can use the snap quiz, which was the feature I was saying was like simple, and one of the reasons we pulled the trigger on this. Snap quiz lets you upload any kind of a document, worksheet, something you already have made. You have hundreds of things you've already made for your class. And you just have to have it in PDF format. So if it's in Word right now, you just convert it to PDF, which is real simple. And then you upload it into Edulastic. And it's going to let you kind of overlay a way for kids to answer it. So if it's a multiple choice worksheet that you've already made, you don't have to create those 20 questions over again and copy and paste and yada, yada. You just upload the PDF and you just overlay basically like ABCD for the kids to pick and just tell the computer which letter's right. It's basically like an electronic Scantron. Think of it that way. But it's not just multiple choice. It can recognize like short answer choices. You can have essay questions in there. I'll get to all that in more detail. But those are the 3 different things basically you're working with. And I would say at least the bare minimum, at least attempt a snap quiz. Try it out. That's a good like dip your toe in the water to see how you feel about it. But it is a great way to make the things that you have currently that kids are having to do by hand and take pictures of and upload and all that business we did in the spring. That the hope is that can eliminate that. You don't have to do that. You can just overlay answer choices as opposed to having to rewrite all of your assignments, right, and build them from scratch, okay? So first of all, you've got your pre-built assessment. So you have your test library. It's this little icon, and immediately a bunch of stuff pops up. And you've got all these filtering capabilities on the left. Start really broad. If you start slapping in a whole bunch of stuff, you're not going to find anything because you're relying that someone took the time to tag it exactly like how you're imagining. Start big. Maybe just type fractions in the search bar at the top. What you got on fractions? Then be like, okay, 20,000 questions. How about just 7th grade and 8th grade, right? So then start filtering down. You'll also find there's all these standards below. You could use that to your advantage. Figure out, find a question you like, look at the standard and search for that standard. Or just Google. It's really easy to Google standards and say, like, what's the standard for XYZ? Because that's a concept I'm teaching. And then you can search, because a lot of what's in their library is very much has to do with standards. So just know if you're trying to find things in the library, start really broad. So you could just find a test, and if you click on this preview button, you're going to get a little quick view of it. If you double click, you're going to get this screen. And I would encourage you, even if you love it and think it's great, to go ahead and clone it, because that means you're copying it into your account. And now it's your little test, and you can edit it and change it, because probably there's going to be something you want to be a little bit different. So if it's something you like, I would say clone it, and then you could assign it right away. That would be one thing. I found a test, it's great. I assigned it, done. That's one way. Assigning a test, I'm going to go more into this a little bit later, but I do want to point out if I'm assigning this test, there's this override test settings here at the bottom. And all the settings we're going to talk about when you create a test, you can always override them when you're in the signing part. So you could always be like, in settings like, I want a 30-minute time limit, or I want to shuffle the questions, those kind of settings. If you get ready to sign, it doesn't matter what was put in there when you create the test, or this other person, remember, if you're getting a test from this database, doesn't matter, you can override it right here when you assign. So now, let's go to making our own test. So same interface, I'm in the test library. And y'all, I do apologize. I'm gonna like move fast just because of the time constraint, because this is me taking a longer class trying to make it shorter. So I apologize if I feel like I'm a little bit motor mouth. But so click new test on the top right hand corner. So you're in that same screen. And then you have a choice to make. Create from scratch or do the snap quiz. We're gonna get to the snap quiz. Well, let me tell you about create from scratch. So I create a test. I have to, and everything's gonna be tabs. If you look here, you've got a tab system for everything. and you can move fluidly back and forth. So you move to the next tab, you can still come back and change stuff. You will, you'll be editing and then previewing and moving that kind of dynamically across your tabs. So description is just naming your test, putting in, a little bit of information. It's not going to make you fill in every single one of these things. That's kind of optional. Tags are great. That's more for your own personal organization. Okay. So if you want to be able to find it more easily later, to categorize things, you might want to put your own tags in there. Think of it as just like category names or file names. Then you click on the next tab for add items, and kind of like that test, it's just going to show you all this preloaded content immediately. This is just all the questions of all the tests they have in their library. And then you have the same filtering guidelines right here on the left. So again, start really broad and then winnow down if it's a lot of questions. If you find a question you like, you want to click the eyeball to see what it really looks like for the student. Here it's just kind of showing you content. So preview for the student to actually see what does this question actually look like for the kid. And then you can just click add and it throws it on your test that you're building. And then you can click on the review tab. Here's where I've got 3 questions that I've grabbed. I can reorder them. I can look at them again. I can delete them. I can decide, I don't really want them. I can view as student. The cool thing about view as student is it lets you take it like a student. It's kind of like a way to kind of check the answer key too and see really how does this work. It's going to show me this question. Now I can click on it and it's going to show me like if the computer counts that wrong or right. So you can test stuff, like especially they have some parameters like for like a fill in the blank question. It has parameters where it doesn't have to be an exact match. There's a parameter where you can say like close match. You might want to play with that and test it first. Like, what does that mean to the computer? And is that acceptable to me? So the idea being there that you don't have to say Rome, Romans, the Rome, like if the word Rome is there, we're good kind of thing. Like that's the idea behind that setting. So then you can go back, you toggle back and forth between reviewing and adding items. So you review, then you can go back to add items, and just back and forth. And then if you decide you want a new item, okay, I might have only created new items, but let's say I'm doing a little bit of both. You click on create new item over here on the right, so you're still in that same add items interface, and it's going to kind of launch like a question maker interface. And you're going to have lots of different question types, and they're kind of categorized for you here on the left to kind of help you sort through. They've got over 50 types of questions, so they've kind of lumped them together to help you quickly find more what you want. I'm going to talk about a few just to give you an idea of the range and the breadth. But on each thing I show you, there's like 5 more versions of that particular thing I'm showing you. So for fill in the blank, they have kind of what you would expect. You can do like the kid has to type it in, or that there's a drop down box they pick from. And they have it where you can put it with images, which I think is really cool. You can upload an image and you can have a drag and drop where they maybe have labels or other images that they drag and put in the right spot. Computer will grade it, recognize it how it should be. Also, it could just be, they type in these labels on this image. You've got lots of classifying, matching, ordering kind of questions where I can have here on classification, I've got column 1, column 2, and all these options, and they have to sort it correctly. You've got reading questions, which are going to kind of feel like that kind of typical standardized test, right? We have a reading passage and certain questions tethered to it. But if you think beyond that, that's a really great way to help you organize sections within a test. So if you have sets of directions that should only go with certain questions, that reading passage question is really just kind of a text box that you tether to certain questions. So you can kind of think of it that way too. And then you've got essay question, that most things would have. Highlighting, I think, is super cool and different, and I haven't seen any other product that does quite this thing. So you can make it to where words are clickable for the kids. They can select certain words, and only certain words are correct. So like I made the grammar placement test on Edulastic. I got the content, and the original version was, here's a sentence, like underline the adjectives. Well, I made it like this, and they had to click on the words that were adjectives. And the computer knew the correct answer and could grade it. And you can decide, do they get partial credit, they get some of the adjectives or not. So you can do that. This hotspot one, the picture's a little deceptive because it's making it look like one giant hotspot, but actually you free draw the hotspots. So you upload an image and you might outline, 5 of those states, and the question may say like, find Texas. If they click on Texas, it's right. And if they click somewhere else, it's not counted right. So you can make like your own clickable regions on the screen, on an image or whatever. And then up here, highlight image, this is more like an opportunity where this isn't going to auto grade, but it'll let the kid mark something up. So maybe you have a picture and you want them to label or identify, do something, all of a sudden they can mark it up and draw on it and do what you've asked. And then you can see it on your end to grade. But that's not going to auto grade because you haven't been able to tell the computer like specifically they have to click on this or do that. Math, do we have math teachers in here? Okay, okay, you have fun. So there's a lot with math, more than I understand, but there's a lot with math and a lot of depth with the kind of questions you can ask with math. So just know that. Graphing, you can say something like graph the slope with this line, and they literally go in and draw the graph with the tools in Edulastic, and the computer will grade it. It will know if it's correct or not. Charts, you can have them make graphs and whatnot, and again, the computer will grade it for you if it's, as long as it's like a clear, correct answer. Now, I mentioned the reading passage. I have that as the second bullet point, but I actually asked them about how can we chunk the information, like how can we have different sets of directions? And he said it's kind of like something they're working on, and these are their workarounds right now because, you know, to make just like a question that could just be text with such directions, like this section do this section do this kind of thing. So he mentioned the passage-based questions, which I told you about is one way to do that. But he said a lot of teachers use true-false questions. I thought this is kind of an interesting, fun idea. And the true-false question gives directions, and then the answer they have to select is for true or false. I have read the instructions. I kind of like that, or I have not read the instructions, and they make it just worth 0 points. But that is a way to insert directions within a test. Now, if you're doing that, you can't shuffle the order though, because your directions could go who knows where. You would stick more with the passage base if you're going to shuffle the order, because that's going to tether to specific questions. But I thought that was kind of a fun idea, so I thought I'd share that. So then you've selected your question type, let's say, and then you're launched into kind of this new screen that again has tabs. And I want to point out to you, there's a lot of information embedded here. If you click on how to author, it walks you through it. It highlights spots on the screen. It's like, put this here, put that there. There's embedded little how-to videos of how to make that question if it's not, you know, straightforward. And then also when you are actually typing the question and the answer choices, you have a little special editor. It's more than you see here because you click this little, the little 3 dots and you get even more stuff. But you've got lots of, you know, formatting tools, but also math symbols, special characters. You could insert a video or an image or a table or have a link to any question. You can add that kind of content to it. And then you've got below that scoring settings. So this is where you want to decide if the computer is going to grade it, which probably if the computer can grade it, I would think you would want it to. So you're probably just going to leave this alone. This is all kind of the default. But if you didn't want exact match, for example, here's where you would change that to, I can't remember the exact phrase, but it's sort of like close match or something like that. You can also insert a grading rubric. You can create a little rubric that goes with an individual question. Maybe one of your questions is this graphing question, and it's worth 10 points, and you want to be able to kind of show them why they got 7 out of 10 points. You can have just a little rubric, simple rubric that goes with that question that's, you know, like neatness, blah, 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 whatever, that you can click through when you're grading, just to an individual question. And then scoring instructions is just some extra text you can add. It's actually like at the bottom of the question on their screen, just more information. Maybe it's a reminder, you know, that kind of thing. Dynamic parameters is a math thing that I don't completely understand. But my understanding is that it takes questions and it switches out like the variables so that basically all the kids are doing the same kind of math questions, but the numbers are changing. So it's like a security thing to kind of help prevent cheating, that kind of thing. Because basically everybody's problems are going to be different, but it's the same conceptually. So there's a lot of these settings, by the way, a lot, but know that they're all, the default's probably fine most of the time. It's just sometimes you might want to drill down and change something. There's a display box. If you're really picky about the way things lay out on the page, it lets you make decisions like, do I want it to be like this, or like this, or like this, or like this? If you really care about that, you can get that deep into it. The solution box, it's pretty cool. Distractor rationale, this one. And by the way, y'all, this is all in that handout I gave you. That's why it's so thick. So just know if some of this I'm going real fast with, know it's all in there. The leave blank, that's something we don't have. Some schools have some program that works with Edulastic that we don't have, that I know nothing about, and so this is just not relevant to us at all. But explanation is kind of cool. Explanation is a sample answer. So when they see the results, like when you choose to release results to them, you can have in there for, number 7 or whatever, here's a sample answer as part of, not just like C was correct, but here's some explanation of how you could have gotten C. Some kind of feedback that's a little richer than just like, hey, this is the right answer. And then hint, you can give students a clue. You can even do lots of hints if you want. And it actually will say hint on their question, and they have to click on hint. And it can be, whatever you want. So, and it's totally optional, but I would encourage you to maybe have fun with that. I think the kids would love it. Maybe it's just a little tip or reminder. Maybe just throw a joke in there every once in a while. I don't know, but it's there. And then you can toggle back and forth between edit and preview mode. So you're building an edit, and then you say, okay, well, what does this actually look like? So this is real simple, multiple choice, obviously. And then you've got metadata, this last tab, and a lot of this is purely optional. It's a lot with labeling standards. I would encourage you to do some tagging though. Tagging is really for you, and it's going to help you find the questions you make later. It's going to help you if you're building something new and you want to pull questions from other things. They don't have it yet, but they're working to develop something where you can set up a quiz or test that says, pull randomly 10 questions from this label and 10 from this label and 5 from this label. And it's going to work with this tagging system. So if you're tagging, that's going to be easier for you. Like concept, like thinking with grammar, like, questions that have to do with compound sentences or whatever. And you're never going to want to go back and do that on the back end. You're never going to. So I'm going to encourage you, if you make a question, throw a tag on there. It's just going to help you stay organized and find your stuff later. So then on any of those tabs, you can click save when you're done. And it's going to pop you back into that add items tab where we were before. And now it's been added to your test. So you can keep working in your add items tab. Either you're searching for stuff that you want to add, or you're clicking on that create new item. You might only be creating new things, but you're always kind of in here. If you're creating, it kind of pops you out for a minute, create the question, save, brings you back here. Then you want to click on review, and you can see, just like earlier when I talked about just grabbing an existing test, you can see what you've got, you can rearrange it, and then really important, click that view as student and preview it. Take it, the test. Make sure. I'm really bad about not having the right answer in my answer key. I get too clicky and in a rush, and C is marked as correct and C is not correct. So take it, and also make sure that you are experiencing it the way the kid is, so that if maybe there's something that's confusing or whatnot. Maybe it didn't turn out the way you imagined when you created it. So I definitely encourage you to do that. And then you go into settings, and you definitely want to, okay, so there's class assessment or practice. Class assessment just means normal. Practice means you don't want the computer to grade it. I never want that to happen personally, because even if it's just for review, I still kind of want to know how they did. But if for whatever reason you didn't want the computer to grade it, you would change it to practice. Now, all these things I'm about to talk about, they're all in your handout, but also these are like the quick things to jump to them. So you're not going to have to, every time you have an assignment, dig through all these settings. I'm going to tell you what they are. The default's probably fine. There may just be 1 or 2 things you jump to. You might be like, hey, I want a password on this. Click here, put your password, done, move on. You're going to know what they are, and you just can jump here to what you need. But it's also all on the same page if you scroll down. Okay, so test type, I just talked about that. So I would think you want to do class assessment, the default, most of the time. Maximum attempts lets you allow more than 1 attempt. So by default, it's just going to be 1. But if you want them to have multiple tries, you can do that there. Add instruction is just some introductory directions for the entire test. You can type it right there. Mark is done. This part's kind of goofy to me. I would just leave it alone. They have a setting that after the due date passes, the computer is going to mark it as done, which is just kind of like a classification. It's just going to put it in your done pile, and it has to be marked done to be generated in reports and that kind of thing. But it's not like you can't still do things with it or sign it again or anything. So I'm telling you about this because it's there, and maybe there's something I'm not anticipating about why you wouldn't want that to happen, but just know that's what that is. Release scores is how you control how much feedback students get. So, and you can change this anytime. I'll show you in a later screen where you would do that on the back end. So maybe in the beginning it's nothing, but then you can decide, you know, any level, you know, just a number score, just what they missed and the right answers, you know, whatever you want it to be, you can change all that in the back end. This is something you just leave off the default because we don't have school-owned devices, so we don't have Safe Exam Browser. So that would be software that would like lock down their computer when they're using Edulastic, but since we don't have, they have their own devices, we can't make use of that. Shuffling questions, so just making the order of questions different for each student so they don't all have the same number 5. You can also shuffle the answer choices again, so it's not as easy. I mean, we all know there's still ways they can cheat, but it's not so easy as being like, hey, what did you get for number 5? I got C, because it's going to be different, right? You have calculator option, and you can decide what level of calculator they have access to. Answer on paper. This would be if you wanted students to view the questions digitally, but write their answers down on paper. Maybe, I don't know. I can't think of a situation right now, but it's there if you ever needed it. Requiring passwords, I really would encourage you to do this because this is really going to help you pace your kids, especially like if you are doing like a quiz or a test, even in person, you want them all to start at the same time, right? You don't pass out the test and they're all willy-nilly starting. You're like giving directions and then you're like, go. And you don't want to be tied to, oh, I have my settings at 8:07 on Tuesday. Because maybe at 8:07, you're still taking attendance and you're really not ready for it to be open, let's say, to like your kids who are online at home. So if you put in a password, then you can get everyone ready, have everything oriented, and then say, okay, you guys, time to take the test. The password is, you know, red cat, or whatever you make it. And actually, I had a testing, I used something at my old school, and we used passwords, and they actually really loved it. They loved to guess the password, and I would give them clues, and they loved it. So I would encourage you to have, I mean, we're kind of talking about how hard it is to build some community and rapport with our guys, but, you know, the guy who guessed the password was always like really happy, and they always wanted to try and guess the password. So I just throwing that out there. There is an option to make a dynamically generated one. That just means that even the teacher doesn't know the password, and then it like at the time when you start the test, it like pops up some random thing. I don't think that's as fun, but it's supposed to be like the idea is just more secure. But I think you guys can manage to like have a different password for every class period or whatever. But if you don't have to think about it, you can let the computer create it for you, and you basically just have something at the top where it tells you the password and you tell the kids. This is really cool. Check answer tries per question. So I meant to say earlier, but you know, don't just think of Edulastic as a test or a quiz tool. This is a tool for anything, homework, any kind of assignment that they need to do. So if it's something that's more formative, I really encourage you to try this out. This lets kids check to see if their answer is right before they move on. It doesn't tell them the right answer. It just says it's wrong if it's wrong, or that it's right if it's right. So, you know, if you've got a kid who, you know, worked out this complex calculations and then typed in his answer and it's wrong, a lot of times you'd rather he start over and try again and get it right and figure it out than just move on, right? So thinking in terms of like homework assignments even, or, you know, things that are more formative, not like a gotcha test, I think this could be really cool. And you can decide how many times they can check. Maybe it's just once, maybe it's 10 times. You can make it to where, and when y'all see the Edulastic video I made for the kids, you can see like what that, a little bit more like what all this looks like on their end. Evaluation method is just if you want to allow partial credit options or not. And if so, how? There's several options under there. Time test is how you put in your timer. And it keeps ticking even if they exit. So if they get out and goof around or whatever for 5 minutes, like when they go back in, those 5 minutes have passed. So just FYI on that. Performance bands, not really relevant to us probably, but actually AP teachers told me that they're excited about this. This is categorizing their performance. So it would be something like everyone who gets an 80 or above gets the label proficient. Everyone who gets from 60 to 70 gets emerging, or that kind of that standardized testing kind of stuff. And then you have a grading scale, standards-based stuff that you can probably ignore. Then if you go into advanced options, you can get into the magnifier and the scratch pad. So the only reason you'd be going in here is if you want to turn these off. And I don't know why you would want to turn them off, but you might, so I'm telling you about it. So students have these up here on the top of their interface. They have this little scratch pad and magnifier. So I'm going to tell you what they are. The magnifier is this little box they take and move around to magnify whatever's there. It's not really great for text. They can make the text bigger. They can make their font bigger already. It's great for like details, like on a, I don't know how well that screenshot works with the image, but you can see that they're trying to see something small on an image, like a map. It's really helpful for that. The scratch pad is basically something that pops open where they can draw, type, whatever, basically. So you might have a question that says, show your work. And or explain your reasoning for your answer choice. You know, we've talked about making some of our assessments maybe like, I don't know if harder is the right word, but more higher thinking, harder to cheat on. Do you know what I mean? So maybe they have to tell you their answer choice and they have to give you some rationale because they have a typing tool. Like they can type, you know, regular text. They have a math tool where they can type out like fractions and all that kind of stuff. They have that, you know, some shapes they can draw. They have like a free form thing, but keep in mind, I mean, that's them with their mouse. Like they're not going to do anything complicated with that, but they can just type straight up stuff. They could write you a note if they want to on there, just like they might, you know, if you were in class. But I think there's a lot of creative ways we could use this with them. So from your perspective, if they use the scratch pad, it's captured. You know, whether you ask them to use it or not, it's captured. And when you're grading, you don't have to look at it too if you don't want to. You click here and you can see what's in their scratch pad. It'll just show up if they used it. And then you can see kind of from the grading interface, like our other systems, you can override the computer and change the grade. You can type in an individual comment, you know, on any question when you're grading. And then here's just when I expand it. I'm just kind of seeing what that kid put on the scratch pad, which is a lot of randomness, right? Okay, so the next steps. You've got, so we made this test. We considered a million settings, which mostly you're probably just going to leave alone or jump to the one thing that you care about, like a timer maybe. And then you look over here on the right. You have a print option, which is nice because it's going to print it nicely formatted. So consider you may have your kids online take something on Edulastic on their computer and your kids in person may be doing the hard copy version. You don't have to make two different things. You just print out for the hard copies you need and you deploy digitally for people who need to do it digitally. And maybe this is just, you know, an activity in class. Again, it may not even be a test. It may be just kind of like a worksheet, formative kind of activity. But now the guys at home can do it digitally. And then the next thing, this little share button, that's not to share with the kids. We assign to the kids. The share thing is to send to a colleague. So maybe someone else who teaches the same class, they want to use this too. That's what that's for. You have a little floppy disk to save option because, you know, maybe you want to save and come back to it. Yeah.
If I share with a colleague, that means he has access to the questions that he can import into his test?
Yeah, so then that means that he can use it. Yeah, I think. I haven't actually done it, but I'm pretty sure that that's the purpose of it. I do know that you can also add people as like a co-editor of the test, and then you can both kind of share it and edit it together, or I think this is how you just give it to them and they make a copy of it. And then you've got your publish option and then assigning. So you can always, yeah, no, go ahead.
They clone it, and he has access to the questions.
Yeah, and it won't affect you. Yeah, but you also can add him as a co-editor, which would be different. You would do that on a different when you were setting it up. So then you can just publish it, and it's just in your test library, and you know you come back to it when you want, or you might be ready to assign right away. But I'm gonna come back to assigning in a little bit because it's gonna be the same for all these. So now let's talk about the snap quiz. So this is what it looks like. It looks a little different, you know, on the kids side. They're going to have basically a picture. It's really just a picture. It's a PDF of a worksheet, a document. And then on the right-hand side are where they put their answers. And you can actually, you don't have to, it could be super straightforward. It could be like there are 10 multiple choice questions and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 over here, like not hard, like a Scantron, right? Or if you think there could be confusion, you can drag the little numbers out and kind of put them where they go if it's not, you know, super clear, if you think they need that direction. So to make our snap quiz, you go back to the test library. So that's where we've been pretty much really this whole time. We keep coming back here, and you're going to choose new test. Last time we did create from scratch. This time we're going to choose upload PDF. And you click this little upload button to find your file. Now over here is this other option. This is the answer only assessment. That's an option if students have a hard copy of the test, but you want them to answer on the computer so that it will grade it for you, like a Scantron. So imagine you have a test and you don't want to lose control of that document, like this isn't leaving the room and it's not being digital, it's not going to be digital either. But I sure don't want to grade this test by hand. So just like you might hand them a Scantron, this is an option where they just have like a digital Scantron basically. So I'm not quite sure with our situation how that might work, but you might have a situation where it does, especially depending on how many of our guys bring laptops. Most likely, if they're all here in the building, you probably could just use a Scantron, but you're going to see the Snap Quiz is going to give you more options than a Scantron, so just bear that in mind.
Well, you know what they like.
So they can't, the copy and paste I know is disabled in Edulastic. I mean, they could take pictures with their phone, and there's no way to stop them from that. But there is that level of security, like they can't do a print screen and stuff like that. But if you did this, like this, just think of this as like a digital Scantron. You probably, maybe we'll never use that, but I'm just letting you know it's there. So most likely you're just here uploading your PDF. It's popping you into that same, tab system. First thing, description, gonna fill in, the name of my test. And then it says worksheet, and it's gonna have your PDF. If you click on manage document on the bottom left, it will actually let you do a little like low level editing, like deleting a page or adding another PDF to this. But really, if you really need to edit something, you should just do it on your computer on Word and then just make it a PDF again and upload it. Like that's gonna be way easier than trying to do a lot on this side. And then this is actually in development. Last I heard, it could be on today, I don't know, but they are adding these tools again where you can kind of mark up the document more, maybe add some things. But again, it's a lot easier, I think. If you have it digitally and it's editable, I would just fix it on your computer and then upload it. To me, that would be a lot easier than trying to mess with all that. So then you have your document here, and on the right-hand side is just kind of this empty sort of tray. That's going to be your digital Scantron. And the way you build it is by clicking on the types of questions below. So you click on one of these little squares, these kind of turquoise squares, and it'll just pop up into your tray. So now here's when I've done a bunch of them, they've all popped up. So number one, that's a multiple choice question that answer. Number two, don't pay too much attention to what the actual worksheet looks like because I went willy-nilly here, but here's a fill in the blank down here. And then I've got a true and false question. This is an essay question. And in my actual answer choices are actually in there, like light color, kind of showing me the key I've set up. And this is saying, B is supposed to be correct. So this is my teacher view of it, okay? So then I'm gonna talk about the question types, and I'll kind of come back to that. So you can obviously do multiple choice. Options don't have to be A, B, C, and D. You can delete that. You can type whatever you want here. You could have A through K up here. I've tested it. You can. It looks a little crazy, but you can have this be whatever you want. Because maybe on your document it's not A, B, C, D. Maybe it's something else. And then just tell the computer, well, which of those do we count correct? And how many points is it worth? Text entry, for some short answer stuff or short phrases. It still has that thing of exact match or just a close match, so you can play with that. I haven't done a lot of testing, so I can't tell you a lot about how great that is or how wide a margin it gives them, but you can do that. Question drop down is kind of just like multiple choice, except that you're going to click it and it's going to give them drop down choices. It's just kind of a style difference more than anything else. You might want to do that if it's like a really long list of options instead of having, a million letters. That might be better. Or if you want to, if maybe the choices are not like A, B, C, D, maybe it's like Texas, Wisconsin, I don't know, New York, then that might work better as a question drop down than the multiple choice. Math is going to let them type in complex math stuff like fractions and square roots. It's just going to give them access to a math keyboard to give. So if they need to type in, maybe it's something where they did all this work by hand, and then they need to type in, their answer, they can do it there. True or false. And then the essay question, it's not going to grade an essay for you, but it's going to capture it and make it easy for you to grade. So the questions are listed in a column on the right. And then I made a little bit of a video. If you to kind of show you the clicking and dragging part, you just take it and you put it, where it needs to go. If it's straightforward, I wouldn't bother with all that. If it's sequentially numbered very nicely and it's very simple, I wouldn't worry about it. But if you have any concerns that they may be unclear where their answer needs to go, then you can do this to help guide them. And in their video, I talk about that with them. That like the numbers might not match perfect, but guess what? They're gonna pull that over. And when they click on it, they click on the number on the document, it highlights over here where the answer needs to go. And then there's also this button that says add section. You can add little headings in the answer column. So you can kind of say, maybe some different directions or some clarification within that little digital Scantron. And then you have an add bulk, which is nice. If you have 20 multiple choice questions, you can go ahead and just click add bulk and add 20 questions all at once and then go through and mark what the correct answers are. So then you want to click the review tab and you can view it as a student. This is what it looks like for them. You can see how number 2 has a little glow around it. I clicked on it and look, number 2 over here is glowing. So again, if the kid's confused, it's alerting them that answer choice goes right there. And you can take it like the kid to practice it. Then you've got your settings tab. All that stuff I talked about before, some of it's not relevant to Snap Quiz, but all that's there, like calculator, yada, 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 you jump through there. And then you've got the same thing here like we did before where I can print it, I can share it with a colleague, I can save it, I can assign it. So as far as, deciding which to use, keep in mind a Snap Quiz, you can't really modify or reorder the questions unless you do it on your end. You can edit that Word document and then upload it. You can't use the questions to like build other assessments, that kind of thing. So there is some benefit in creating your questions when you think kind of long term. But when you think realistically, and there's only so many hours in the day, and all of us are being asked to do a tremendous amount right now, the Snap Quiz is going to save you a lot of time, I think, and be a lot easier. Although, long term, you might think about wanting to build that bank of questions. Also, there are some really cool question types in there that are, not just multiple choice, that kind of thing. If you want to do something that's a little more interactive, maybe a little higher level in some ways, then that's a great tool. Okay, so we made some assessments. How do we find them? What do we do with them? How do we assign them? So you go to your test library and you want to filter by authored by me. There were tons of filters in there. Clear it all out and go authored by me. And I will tell you with the filters, everyone who's had trouble finding stuff, they have filters on that they're like remnants of the last search they did. Like go make sure all your filters are cleared. And then you go in and you select that assignment you made, you click on assign, and then you choose your class. You also can pick specific students within that class if you want to. You have an open and close date. You can also have this option here where you can have an open, close, and one that has like allow late submissions. So you can if you click on that, it opens up new options you can consider about how you want to handle that. And then the open and close policy, I would just leave that alone. Maybe there's something I don't know or understand about why you'd want to change that. Please let me know if you discover something. Test type, probably you want to just leave that alone. We want it to be graded. There's that override test settings button again. If maybe you made this test a month ago or last year and you're like, I don't remember how long a timer I had or whatever, you can just do it right here. You'd be like, last year I think was 30 minutes, but I think I'm gonna give more time this year. You just override right here when you assign. Oh, all those things, sorry, there are the arrows. Okay, so then you click assign again on top right, and you get this little share link. This is what I really want to encourage you guys to throw in OwlHub, just because it's going to take the guys straight there, at least in the beginning. We're going to try and make it as painless as possible. So they go in OwlHub, they click on their calendar, and they get where they need to go. They absolutely can still find it from their Edulastic account. They absolutely are getting a video walking them through where it all is, and anything that's assigned is going to pop up. But to save yourself just some headaches, I think we need to make it as simple and straightforward and excuse-proof as possible. So if you have that link, it's going to take them straight to it. If you can't find the link or that's too much, put www.edulastic.com. Give them something to guide them down the proper path. And then make sure you're really clear in your description where this is. So Edulastic should be in the description. It should say something like, Chapter 5 quiz on Edulastic. to clue them in about where they're supposed to go, what they're supposed to do. And then notice in here there's this shared with private library. That's going to be by default, but also you can go in here and here's where you can share it with other people, or say you want it to be shared with the whole world, which I doubt you want to do, but that's all in there. So now when you are on your assessments tab, so you have an assessments tab, and you actually have to click on this, I realized the other day before this expands, but this is the assessments that are kind of in progress, and you have something called the live class board. You click on that, and you're going to get real-time data. So this is how everybody in the class is doing right now. And here's my overall average. Here's you know, how many are getting right and wrong on the questions. Green is right, red is wrong, yellow is partly right, gray is skipped. And this little line, the line graph, is how long they have spent on the question as a class. So I can see, you know, this question's taking them longer, for example. And the times are over here. It's like 30 seconds, a minute, and whatnot. So then it's going to default on the student card view below. And that's just giving you a quick snapshot of how that individual kid did. I mentioned these colors. One I didn't mention is blue. Blue means things that you have to grade. That are just not auto-graded, like an essay perhaps. So it's giving you a real quick look right away. If you click on View Responses, it's going to throw you into the Student tab. And here you can see individually how did that kid do on each question, how long did that individual kid spend. And you know what? If you see that the class average was about 45 seconds per question, and this Johnny spent 5 seconds on every question, that's a big red flag, right? It gives you some good data to, you know, maybe identify possible cheating or just something, you know, something might be up. So then you can individually go through that kid and can edit the score, can grade them, or you can click on questions, which I prefer to do. I like to grade like all the number 5s, all the number 6s. You know, if it's auto graded, you don't technically have to do anything, but you might just want to take a look, especially if it's like a short answer question. I always like to see, well, maybe there's an answer I didn't think of that could be correct. So then if you select kids from the card view, you have more actions over here on the right. You can print it, like a report of how they did, but one of the big ones is this redirect button. Redirect is how you take care of like a kid was absent and I need to open it up for them again. Or I need this kid to retake this. That's how you deal with redirect. And I feel like I might not have a shot. Maybe I do later, but something that came to my attention recently is that if kids aren't there, you probably want to mark them absent because then it won't allow them to get to it. It's kind of weird for us because even if they're absent, maybe they are online doing it. But if you technically are like, this kid's absent and I don't want him to have access to this, you just mark them as absent in here, then it'll just close it for them. And then you redirect it to them when you want them to have access. Okay, so when you redirect, you just pick, you know, new dates, and you can decide if you're redirecting and they already started it or they already took it, you can have options like they can see their previous responses. And if they can see it, can they see if they were correct or not? So maybe you have that kid who after 10 minutes is like, I got kicked off, yeah, won't let me back in, whatever it is. You can decide, can he go back in and start fresh? Or do I want him to go back in and pick up where he left off? You have all those options in there. And then you also have got some other, here's where you mark them as absent, okay? Do you have that? So here you can pick a kid. I can be like, Joey's not here. He's not anywhere. I don't want him to possibly like be doing this test right now when I don't want him to be. You can mark him as absent over here. And then also you can add a student if somehow a kid got left off and you need to assign it to him, and remove students. If you, I'm sorry, I have a more detail. Let me slow down. All right, so I can force a submission even if they haven't finished, and it'll capture the data. So sometimes kids like finish but don't click that final submit button or some goofy things like that. You can just submit whatever's there, and you have it. You can mark as absent, remove their access because they're not there, and you're worried about the security of your test or whatever. You can add, assign more students, remove them. Now, no, if you remove kids, that deletes the data. So if they took it and you remove them, that data is gone. This would just be like you grabbed the wrong kid from the wrong class, or somehow you've messed up and they shouldn't have that test at all. The only reason you removed them, okay? And then, you know, there's some download options. All right, you've got 3 little dots up here on the right. Here's where you change what you want them to see as far as releasing the score, adjusting the level of feedback. You can also unassign the test. Now, if you unassign the test, okay, it deletes any data. So you're only doing that because you're like, whoops, I didn't mean to assign this test to this class. This isn't right. That's fine if it deletes it and they never did anything. But if you have a bunch of people take a test and then you unassign it, you don't have that test data anymore. So unassign is just like, I made a goof. They're not supposed to have this test at all. If you forgot you made a password, you don't remember what it was, click view password right there. So your report cards is how you create a little report that's like parent friendly if you wanted to give them, some data about how they did on an assignment. And I'm pretty sure you can pick, just one assignment, or you could say, these 3 assignments, like, hey, look at his last 3 tests, all that's there. Then if you click on the next tab, you have the Express Grader. And the Express Grader shows, how everybody did. It's sortable, so you could sort by question and see, everyone who missed question 3. That might help you throw kids in groups, right, for mediation or whatever. And you also can click on that and go right into that question and grade it. So maybe you're just eyeballing and you're like, he missed this, let me see here. And you open it up and you can change the grade or just see more details about why they missed it. So you can actually do all your grading from right here if you wanted. If it's mostly auto-graded and you just want to eyeball a few things, ones that got missed or certain kid, you could do that right there. You also have this button up here that says Present. Present will make all of the names anonymous and scramble them up and down. And then you can share this with students. So you can make everybody anonymous so no one knows who's who. And then you can have conversations about how we did on this assessment and pull up any of that data I just showed you, all of it, all these pages of data, all of that, you could show them and the names won't be there. It'll be silly things. It'll be like pink unicorn. You might get a kick out of that. So now when it comes to the grades, this is the best screen to be on because it's got the name of the student and the score on that one assignment. So there is like a grade book thing you can link on, but that's going to be a whole bunch of stuff. You just want to transfer to your grade book. So you want to open up AlHub, have it, side by side, kind of minimize it. It's going to be alphabetical. Make sure the classes will be set up for you, but should match perfectly, and you just go through and transfer. I'm sorry that we have to do that, but it's just the only way, and we felt like the tool was worth it for all the things it can do. And then on your assignments page, you can see, all the little tests that you've given and whatnot, and that's how you get into the live class board and all that. You have shortcuts here to all those things we just looked at. Live class board, Express Grader, and reports. And if you go into actions, assign it to a class, duplicate, make a copy of this assignment. Maybe you're going to change it a little bit and do something else with it. You can preview it to see it the way the student sees it. You can view the test details. That just takes you straight to that review tab that you were in when you were building the test. You can go back in and modify. Release scores lets you into that interface again to decide how much feedback they can see. Summary report, generate just a summary of how the assignment went. This is really cool. This is brand new. This is great. Edit and regrade. Did you mess up? This channel did period 1. Everyone missed number 7 because you put the wrong answer choice. Well, you can fix it and click edit and regrade, and it will regrade it and fix it and be good like for your next classes. Whereas I know with like AlHub, you just like once you assign a test, like that's it. You can't do anything with it. You have to like start over or duplicate it. It's kind of a mess. This is really, really cool. I haven't seen any product that does that. And then unassign, we're moving that assignment from the kids, but remember that's going to delete data. So you're only unassigning because you made a goof and they weren't supposed to have it at all. And then you also have, this is really cool, I just found out about this. If you go to your Manage Class tab and choose your class, you can view as a student with this little, you kind of have to hover your mouse. This little fun little mask pops up, and then it lets you see into the kid's account. And what's nice about that is when the kid's like, it's not there, you can find out if it's really there or not. You can be like, no, it is there. I'm viewing as you. You got to click on your XYZ tab. Like, it's not letting you like do anything in their account, we'll let you see it. So you can verify, like, okay, they're right. It's not showing up. Maybe I didn't assign it to them, or maybe I've got to put in a tech ticket with Edulastic now. Maybe there's a major issue. Can help you figure that out and kind of bridge that divide. If the kid's saying one thing, you actually can eyeball what his account looks like. And then you've got this actions tab when you're still in the class, student action. So I can select a student and have some options here. You can enable text to speech. It's not automatic for all kids, but you know, we might have kids with a certain profile where we might want to do that for them, where they the computer will read the question aloud to them. You can also disable it. You can remove a student from your class here. Maybe they've moved away. Reset password. This should not be relevant for you at all because they should be using single sign-on. So just know, like that's there, but they should be using single sign-on. If they can log into their email, they should be able to get into Edulastic. And they may just need to be reminded that that's how they sign in. They click on the big red thing. You can edit a student, you know, if something's goofy with their name. I mean, I don't anticipate there should be any issues with that, but that's in there. You can also create groups, which is really cool. So it's kind of like a mini class within your class. So if you have kids already in groups, then it's a lot easier to say assign like this group's getting this version of the test, and this group is getting this version, and this group is getting this version. So it's just a way to kind of make little mini groups within your class. And then merging duplicate student accounts, I don't know that we will run into that, but we have the ability. If somehow a kid's managed to make 2 accounts and something crazy is happening, we can merge them. Playlists, I'm just going to touch on super briefly. A playlist is basically where you decide you want to lump 3 different activities into one thing. So the kids click on one button and it's like, do this and this and this and this. It's just kind of making a folder of assignments for them to work through. And then school reports, tons of information, tons of reports. I just copied up their website on the last couple pages of your handout, but all those reports supposedly do. And if you're someone who's really into data, there's a wealth of things that you can put together there. Couple of just last things I want you to be aware of. Students have the ability to message you from within the assessment. They have this little button down here. They can click on that. It says report content issue. And this is the idea behind this is then for them to be able to tell you without leaving their test, hey, number 7, I keep clicking on the 3rd answer choice, which is Mount Helena, but I don't think it's working or whatever it is. And it will send you, the teacher, an email. And you probably want to give your kids some guidance on what's appropriate for them on this for you and your class. Some like basic thing I'm thinking of is like, I want to know if it's something about not being able to put your answer. What are you trying to answer exactly? Don't tell me the C because maybe they're scrambled up and C means nothing to me. But it might also just be, you know, I mean, you have to decide how you want to use it. Maybe you'll say like, hey, if you have a question, you can type it right there. And because then think about it, it'll go right to your email. They didn't have to leave the test or anything. So just know that that's there. Students have access to a help desk also. You know, lots of tutorials. They can do their own little tech ticket. If they're having something that sounds really technical, encourage them to contact Edulastic because all we can do at our help desk is be like contacting Edulastic. And now we've got going in like this 3-way circle of communication where they're like, well, what kind of computer is he on? I'm like, trying to your own kid, what kind of computer are you on? And it just slows it down. So if they have something that, you know, think is clearly maybe a technical problem with the website, encourage them to contact them. You also have the help desk. You have a chat feed that you can jump on. I love the site they have, which this is all in your handout, where you can search and find tons of directions, videos. It's really well done. Let's get the example since we don't have, oh, that was in, good. I think I'm way over. Am I way over? I'm over, sorry. Woo, that's a lot. There's a lot there, right?